We were able to run these workshops in part from a grant from the National Trust. 3 workshops as we did a historic plaster workshop, we have this workshop, and we have a window restoration workshop the first weekend of October. And so just we want to be mindful today of safety. We do have safety goggles that we would like everyone to wear, or give glasses or something. So if you don't have your own, please put them on. All right, take it away.
Okay. I guess if I could, and the glasses, I'm really bad and I don't wear them very often. Although we do, on the job, there are times when even my men wear them. There's certain jobs that are very dangerous. But if you're not used to doing things, I'd like it if everybody did wear them. It would be safer. If I could ask everyone to just drive one, now these are 12s. This is a 12 penny framing now. Drive it into the block of wood you have. And I think there's plenty of hammers. Isn't that frustrating?
Yes, it is. How much is that weigh?
It's not too heavy. It is a gun though, so don't point it at anybody.
I won't point it at someone.
But it's not too bad.
No, it isn't too bad. Who
No.
else wants to try?
It's not a tool that a homeowner needs. It is for new construction. But I just want you to,
Oh, it's not as bad as I thought.
it's not that bad.
It looks huge.
It does. It does. It really isn't too bad. We'll show you later. This is a framing gun, but there's guns for everything. I mean, if someone here was going to finish the trim, who was that? Someone has a house going.
Oh, the trim is done, but yeah.
Oh, you were joking. You were joking. Because they do have, we have guns for siding and framing and sheeting and trimming, for joist hangers.
Can you put different size nails in a gun, or do you need different guns for different?
Well, you need, like this gun will take 12s to 8s. So you could frame and sheet with the same gun. But like I said, this is not really a tool anybody here probably has or needs. It was just to give you the idea, like power tools really do save time. You have to drop it, drop it and shoot at the same time. The old ones, the old ones don't have, a lot of them don't have a safety and they double shoot. They're much more dangerous. I mean, the new ones are pretty safe.
Drop it and pull the trigger.
There you go. She's got it. These are to show you how many different guns on jobs that, like that's a staple gun. This one is for plates. This if you're setting rafters, you put the point of this in the hole of your metal plate. So this one is very specific. It only does that one job. It only shoots in. This is a little brad gun. This is really handy for like window trim or something small, the little pieces that hold your glass in. I mean, really, none of these guns you'd use except maybe if you were trimming. But, don't go out and buy them. They're just good to know what they do. This one is for if you're setting rafters. And you have to have clips for hurricane clips.
Okay.
And they're a metal bracket, and the end of that nail goes in the hole of the bracket.
So that's pretty specialized then.
Yes, it's only used for that one job.
Wow.
These are both finished guns. One's an angle, one's a straight. This is a siding gun. If you've got one in your garage and you want to use it, it's cool, but I wouldn't go out and buy them. The problem is, well, they're kind of pricey, but the fasteners for them are quite a bit too. When you buy a box, some of the nails for these are $30 a box.
They do have lending tool libraries, so you can sometimes get some of these tools. You can rent it for the weekend or something if you happen to have you know, a job that you just want it for, you know, you're doing a little shed and you want to put up rafters, but, you know, most of these things, somebody like, you want, a skilled contractor is really going to be using.
Well, and even if you were renting it, you'd want to have some help because,
Yeah,
you know, you wouldn't be doing it alone. If you had 2 or 3 neighbors that offered to come over and help you side the garage, then you might rent a siding gun, you know, and it would probably pay for itself then. My son, who works for a big contractor, says, Mom, there's no extension cords on jobs anymore. Everything's battery. But the thing is, it's all the same principles. It's the same tool, you just don't have a cord. They have chop saws that are batteries. They have chainsaws that are batteries. They have a lot of
I guess the
tools
only
now.
I mean, there's a lot of pluses. The downside would be it's a lot heavier.
It is, and if you're buying something, you're probably right, usually, because you have to carry the battery with it. So it is heavier, and, you know, the lighter the better, let's face it.
Yeah, it doesn't seem too heavy at 7 o'clock in the morning, but by 10 o'clock, it's
Right.
getting heavier and heavier.
Yeah, and your wrists will bother you if you're using something too heavy, so be careful of that. I guess we could just show you what some of these other tools do, but then I do hope that everybody will want to, we'll go through what they all do real quick, and then if somebody does want to try one, we'd be glad to plug it in and let you try it. But I would like, as you can see, we've got cords everywhere, I would like us all to at least use a circular saw and a drill. Probably everybody's used a sander, I would think. I mean, you just plug it in and it just sands, right? This is an orbital. This one is handy for, you know, if you've got a porch and you've got railing and you got to sand under it, this is pretty handy, you know, to get underneath something. So that's really the only difference in these. This one, a palm sander. You just plug it in and run down, you know, run with the grain. You know, probably.
Sand everything that you do? Like
No, a lot of things, I mean, it depends on the job. You know, some people want it the rustic look, you know, it just depends on what. If you're doing interiors, it's kind of nice to have a nice clean finish so you can clean it later. This is a jigsaw, and this is what you'd use to cut circles, like, let's see, like cut into your formica and you're setting a sink. You know, you can cut a circle. What else? There's a lot of reasons. You're putting up siding and you've got a curve. You know, it's really handy for that, and it's a pretty safe tool. This is a Sawzall, which is a brutal. You can cut circles with this too, but this one's brutal. This is a demolition tool. If you have someone remodeling, or, you know, you can cut right through a wall. You can cut through a roof, shingles, sheeting, your rafter, everything at once. You put a longer blade on it, and you either put a metal or a wood blade. But it's a brutal tool. I mean, you really got to hold on. It really is not a lot of fun to use. You know, there's places where no other tool will do it. So, pardon?
You can go through pipes with it.
You can. You can put metal blade on and cut through plumbing, electrical if you're not careful. You can cut through about anything with it. And it really is, you know, the remodelers make.
Any tips on using it? My partner has one, I've never used it, he's used it, but
Any tips? Well, it's kind of like any other saw. You want it, if you're going to cut something, say you're going to cut window cutouts or something, it'd be easier if you drilled a hole in the corner and then put it through there and started it before you start cutting down. You know, have it running first. It's pretty hard to, I mean, believe me, men in construction do it all the time. They'll get it running and they'll jab it into something and run down. But but I would suggest drilling a hole. So it's because when you jab it into something, it's going to shake you all over.
Do you, like when you're drilling, do you like make yourself a line with a pencil, or you just do it?
Well, yeah. I mean, you have to have some guide,
Yeah.
you know. In new construction, for like window cuts, you run the side of the saw down your framing. But for anything else, if you're just if you're chopping off the overhang on a building to put an addition, you would snap a chalk line down that overhang and you stay on your line. This is the size drill that probably you would have in your garage and now same way, no one uses these anymore because everybody has battery. But, you know, if your battery goes dead and you still have one of these around, they work just fine. There's no reason to not use it. You can do all the same things. You know, it fits all the same drivers that you have, and it doesn't run dead. I still use mine, you know. The only difference is it doesn't change drivers as quick. You usually have a key on these old ones to put your driver in. So, I mean, it's a little slower changing, but, you know, it works. A hammer drill really is just another drill, but it vibrates as you drill into something. It does just what it says. It hammers you into it. And you use it if you're going to pin a foundation, pin like an addition or foundation or something into bedrock, and you have to drill a hole to put a pin in. You couldn't do that with those other drills. You'd have to have a hammer drill. Sometimes you use it to drill into concrete to set fasteners in a concrete. And it's not as scary as, I'm trying to think, Kim and I had to drill a hole in concrete once. And remember that? And I had never used this tool. You know, I bought it for my guys. I never needed it. And we realized, we got to drill a hole in that concrete, you know? And it was just like a regular drill, only it shook you a little bit. I mean, I don't know why I was worried about that. So there's nothing different about it except that it
And it makes that noise, that awful noise.
yes, it makes an awful noise. You think you've broke something, but it's fine. That's the noise it makes.
Does everyone feel comfortable replacing, you know, different drill bits and different things? I mean, does anyone want to try it?
Well,
Make sure they get it nice and seated well.
We can try that on these.
we can, yeah, when we get to the screw guns, we'll do all that. Yeah, yeah.
I have another question about that thing. It seems like my husband needs that kind of drill all the time. I always hear that.
Yes.
Why is he using that all the time? I mean, he does construction, so why is he using that all the time?
Well, some guys like to use it like putting down decks, put a pressure treated deck. You know, PT is pretty hard to drill into, and sometimes it just makes it easier to have, because your screw guns, I think all of them they have little pictures on here. They have a screw, a drill, and a hammer. And that means if you turn it to hammer, it does that. It makes that horrible noise, but it does make it pretty easy to drive in.
On a regular,
never knew what
regular
those
screw gun.
That's what that is.
Okay, and then.
See?
Yeah.
Drill, screw, hammer drill.
Oh, I don't know if my icons are just, okay, thank
But that's what they are. Yeah. Yeah, some guys use them all the time. The noise drives me nuts, but sometimes you have to use it. And these are my husband's. I thought we'd have a few so we could all have. Mine, the clutch is going on it, although it's still working. But there's all different sizes. You know, they're different battery sizes, they're different brands, you know, but they pretty much all work the same. The biggest thing with these is that you have to have the right driver. A lot of times, you know, you look at this, oh, well, that'll fit the screw I've got. But you put it in, it's a little bit sloppy. Well, you're just going to strip it out. You're not going to get that screw in. You know, the Phillips itself, I think there's 4 sizes of those. And it drives you nuts. There's so many sizes and they're all really close, you know. If you buy a box of something, some sort of fastener, a lot of times the driver you need is in that box, but not always. Anyways, keep something, keep all your drivers together, make sure you have the right size. Otherwise, you're just going to frustrate yourself. You know, you're going to strip it out, you're going to be cussing, you know.
How do you know when you have the right size? 'Cause a lot
You-
of times it feels like it fits and then, like, you're right, it strips it. So-
Well, if it's not tight, if it doesn't fit in nice and tight, you don't have the right size.
Okay, so it should be pretty snug.
Pretty snug, yeah. And, you know, pull your driver out that you think you need, try it first, then put it in your gun, you know. I tell you, half the time when I have that's what it is. It's the wrong driver, you know. There is, and we just discussed, usually you've got 3 settings on it. The hammer is the loud one, but you can use it, you know, you don't have to for most things, but you can. The drill bits, you know, I just keep, I mean, you know, there's sets, you can get a set of drill bits or keep them here. And
What's the difference between a drill bit and a driver?
the drivers are, like these are drivers. And this is, I don't know what you call these parts. This you put in your gun and it holds the ends, you know, of whatever you're putting in. But now some of these, like this is a driver for a sheet metal screw, you know, like if you're putting roofing on or something. You know, there's drivers, some of these big drivers are for timber screws, you know, the really big heads. And those you just put in.
So you don't always need a bit.
You don't always,
Need a bit?
you know, it depends on what you're doing. I mean, a lot of metal fasteners have a point and they drill a hole in the metal, so you don't have to drill anything. Okay, here's one that got stripped out. This got to be thrown away. That's because somebody tried the wrong size. You probably, with a gun as small as this, you really wouldn't want to go any bigger than that. And you probably can't go any bigger, you know. There's a point where guns have a certain amount of power. But this is a very nice size for a woman. I think my son bought me this one Christmas because my other one was dying. And this is a wonderful size. It's not too heavy. It has enough power to do anything you need to do.
battery?
Oh, yeah.
The battery on the end there?
Yep,
Okay, great.
yep.
It still has got some strength to it.
Well, it's a good brand. I mean, it's you know, it's not a homeowner brand, but it's light enough to use, you
Yeah.
know. But this is what I mean by there's so many different sizes. Look at how many sizes just this one profile has, you know, and a lot of these have the same, you know, 5 or 6 of them. So this is very frustrating, but I don't think there's any way around it. I mean, that's what the industry does.
Just change it from the like change the whole thing from the beginning.
Yeah, yeah. And now some of the reason they change it is if you're putting in a huge screw, obviously you've got to have a bigger head that is going to do the job. So, I mean, you know, but it would be nice if there weren't so many different profiles.
Oh,
You can use a square, you can use this one,
huh.
and you can use this one.
Let me see, it's called a multi-head.
Yeah, they're not as easy to use.
Okay.
I would
don't think
steer,
I've seen those, or,
yeah,
it wouldn't take a square driver. but-
it does. It takes square and Phillips.
Okay.
Can you describe the numbers, high to low, and what that represents?
Yeah, that the speed of what you're putting it in, you know.
So low would be what? Slower?
Yes, the low is the lower number. And there's also a 1 and 2 here on top, like for high and low. So, and not all guns have that.
High and low.
Oh, high and low, how quick you go in, I guess.
How would you do, like,
Here.
what would you base that on? Like,
certain things you're
Okay.
supposed to go faster.
Do you hear the difference?
The speed at which it turns.
Yes, yep,
Fast or slow.
yep. A hand plane is a lovely tool, but it's a lot of work. It's, this is a tiny hand planer, but they make them like 2 feet long, and I'm sure you've all seen them. They're all antique stores are full of them.
I
So,
would imagine too that the electric one, I've never used one, but I would imagine they're not as subject to your pressure. That those, they can kind of more glide around, whereas hand planers, it's pretty easy to get too deep pretty quickly if you put too much, not steady pressure on it. Do those work a little bit better?
these can get away with you too.
Okay, I've never used one, so.
Yeah, you do have to, if you were going to plane down like a really nice door, you might want to practice on a board first. I mean, they're not that easy, but they save a lot of time, and a lot less muscle involved. Usually it's used, on doors that stick, old wood doors, or you ripped it, but you've got saw marks on the edge, for something like that. This is a router. It's the same thing. It's probably nothing you'll ever use. What it does, you run it along the edge of something to change the profile. Like if you wanted a 45-degree profile, or, there's all different router bits. You could have a design that goes down and, like the edges of countertops and,
Or like the molding around.
or molding.
If you were gonna do
Yeah.
tug and groove, would you use that, or?
If you're doing tongue groove, you buy it. You know what I mean? You'd go buy it. But you could, if you bought an old house and you want to match the molding that's there, you might buy the bits, or you or your husband might buy the bits and make, because if you only needed 2 or 3 pieces, you might end up making it. So same way, it's a pretty specialized tool. All the different bits cost a lot. It's nothing you'd buy unless you really needed it. And you could probably rent a nice one. These are just old grinders, which are pretty handy for a lot of different things. You put all different blades on these. You can, this one has a blade. You can grind off the rust off your car. You can use them for metal, for cleaning up stuff. You can put little chainsaw blades on them. And we don't have one in here with a blade on, but you can put chainsaw blades on these, and you see the log work in these old camps, like the log railings. Well, when you cope a log, it has to fit around something. And so usually a tool like this gouges out the center of your log. So it's pretty handy for log work. It's handy for a lot of other things, but carpenters usually end up using it for log work. It's a very dangerous tool. It's one of the worst in here. It can get away from you. You have to be careful where you set it down. It's, you can gouge out a lot of wood, but you could also gouge out a lot of your knee. You really have to be careful with it. But I don't mean to scare you, but it's a tool you really have to pay attention to, So these grinders, if we're doing log work, we use them all the time. If we're doing log work, which is usually porches or railings, we'll use a chainsaw and these grinders. And really, that's just about all you need for those. I guess I could show you this while it's right here. These are like fingers. See what I'm doing is you can push this against your log, and then you have a pattern of what you have to gouge out. So then you magic marker this on your log and then gouge it out with that. So, and there's, these fingers come in all sorts of different, but that's what this is.
And those are really handy if you're working on an old house to match molding profiles.
Right, you could use it for that too.
Or windows, your wainscot, various things. If you have molding profiles that you're trying to match, crown molding, things like that, you hopefully, if you have a contractor working on it, he's matching the profiles and
Yeah, hopefully.
Call that blue piece itself.
molding profiles.
There you go, molding profile.
These are both skill saws. I mean, look at the difference. So you've got them for all different sizes, This is for timber frame work. If you're putting up a timber frame, these aren't going to do you any good. They're not going to cut through a 10 by 10. You can only cut, you're only going to cut whatever's here. So you're going to need this saw. Although this is a bear, I hope to God none of you ever have to use it. It's really heavy. And then this is, for little finish work in a shop. And now most of these saws you can change and put a blade on so that you can cut into masonry or concrete. This one right now has a metal blade on it, which is a fibrous blade that you actually use up. A wood blade, they just get dull. Your teeth get dull. This one you actually use up. So as you can see, the one that's on there is just about gone. There's very little left of it. Although probably enough to get, well, you could maybe get a couple more cuts, but it's pretty well gone. So these saws can be used for metal or wood or concrete. Now in concrete, you would only be scoring the edge. Let's see, if whoever poured the concrete didn't give you an expansion joint, you would snap a line and score a little line so that if it cracks, hopefully it cracks in that spot. You might have to cut into concrete to flash a chimney. There's a few places where you might have to cut into concrete or stone, but stone's pretty tough. As far as saws, these two are a 7 1/4 blade. This one's got an actual blade on it. This is probably what you have in your garage. It's kind of the standard, it's the size that's been here forever. And it's not too heavy, but if you're going to go out and buy a saw, I would recommend this one. This is mine, and it's wonderful. And considerably lighter, I'll let each of you, considerably lighter. It'll cut everything, it'll cut frame and lumber. It will not cut rough cut framing at an angle. You can't cut, but usually you're using dressed rough cut, or dressed lumber. So usually your frame and lumber is 1.5 inches, and it will cut that. And it'll cut all the trim and sheeting and everything else. It's, to me, much nicer.
Lisa, what's the blade size on that one?
I believe it's a 5.
Smaller than the 7 1/4?
This is 7 1/4, this is 5.
Okay, thank you.
5. The other difference, as you notice, is the blades on different sides. And for many, many years, the blade was always on the right, always. Now they make them both ways. And years ago, my husband, I think, bought me, not this saw, but the same type of saw with the blade on this side. And all the guys would tease me, Jesus, look at that girl's saw, the blade's on the wrong side, it's too light. I'm telling you, they use it all the time. It's a nice saw. You can see where you're cutting a lot better. But if you've already used this and you're used to it, fine. But if you're going to go out and buy one, I would suggest a smaller saw.
And they might be using skills. They might get an opportunity to use saws later.
Yes, I would like everybody to try cutting something. And you can use both of them, see what you think. And like I said, there's very few things that you can't cut with. And if you can't get all the way through, like, all right, you have 3 rough cut boards, you can flip it over and cut it on the other side. You know what I mean? For the few times when maybe it won't cut all the way through, or if you're almost cut through, with a handsaw, you can finish that cut, A chop saw stays in one spot. Whereas, you know, and you lay your board here and you cut it. And so it's probably a little safer, but I mean, it's a big saw, you know, unless you've got one anyways. And it turns, you know, you can cut different angles. You turn it to the angle you want. Most of them have stops at 45, 30 degrees, you know, but you can swing it to any angle. It's very nice for trim work. You know, if you just want to take off like a 32nd of an inch, that's kind of hard to do holding a board and cutting it. I mean, somebody who does it for a living is no problem, but if not, this is a lot handier for just trimming a little bit of something. You really have to be careful with your back, you know. A lot of things that a guy can do, we can still do, but we have to be careful. And a lot of times, like, you know, you watch your husband put a screw in up way over his head. Now, we're not going to be able to do that most likely, but if you get a stepladder and climb up and get behind that, you can do it. You know, you just have to be careful and you have to put your weight against it. It may take a few minutes longer, but you can still do it. You know what I mean? You can do anything. You just have to think about it, be careful, and position yourself safely. You know, a lot of it's that.
Yeah.
It
And
does
they really,
tip too.
And like I personally like skill saws because I'm not particularly coordinated to like hold it in, because like I don't quite have enough, you know, to like make sure. I don't do really nice crisp lines sometimes, which most of the time it doesn't matter. You know, they're pretty close, but a tool like that, you know, it's precise. You know, and it's a lot. It's got a guard. It's a lot. You know, something to push it up against. So I find myself as a woman doing it that it's a lot easier for me to have that set up and use that when we're built. You know, depends on what you're doing, but
Right.
clapboard being the one in particular that's a really handy tool for.
And this, when you are set up, whether it's in your shop or on a job, you want to have it in a spot and you want to have space for your board and a couple blocks to get it so that your board comes in and lays flat here. You know, otherwise your cuts are not going to be good. You want your board flat here and against this to have a good cut. But yeah, if you had it at home and you could, and there are holes, you could screw it right down to something, your workbench or something. This is, and actually I could take you in the shop and show you, we kind of have the same thing in there that's permanently in the shop. This one does go to work, or used to. There are smaller ones, there are ones that don't tilt, like I just tilted, there are ones that only chop up and down. There are smaller ones that will only slide back and you can only do like a 4 or 6 inch board, where this one, I think you can do 10, maybe 12 even. You know what I mean? There's all different sizes of the same tool.
What tool would you use? Let's say you're making a rustic frame and you wanted to take a branch and cut it in half.
Oh.
You know, I'm not sure that I would ever do that.
Yeah.
But, what would I do if I ever thought?
A bandsaw.
A bandsaw, okay.
Yeah. And that's kind of a shop tool. And I can show you, we have one in there. Yeah, that'd really be the only safe way to do that.
You got the chainsaw too.
Oh, right. So that's a straight cut, if you just cut straight. But then, if you want an angle,
Yeah. Okay.
loosen this, bring it around to whatever angle you want. Okay, so the other thing is, if we go back to 0, you can,
Is that this adjustment right here, Lisa?
yes.
Okay.
And you don't have to tighten this every time.
Okay.
You can. And if you want to cut the other way, you hit this.
Other way, meaning what? Oh, wow.
This.
Cool.
So let's do 30 at that too. Okay. And a piece of concrete board or something. You pull it
pushing-
forward when you're, before you cut, and then you push into what you're cutting.
Okay.
It's gotta be up against your
Right.
fence.
And then
Pull
this
back.
Okay, you pull it back while it's up in the air like that.
Yeah, or you can drop it lower, but as long as you don't have the trigger, you don't want it to spin.
Okay, and I have no line, so I'm not worrying. And then I'm gonna push it away from me. Does
And you
it?
can't miss the line that way.
I like you. Let it go while it's in it, or not? Should I have pulled it back?
Doesn't matter.
Should be done, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Let's see.
Wow.
That's pretty fun.
That is satisfying, man. That's funny.
Should the wood you're cutting be supported on both sides? So in other words, when she came through, then it just sort of collapses?
Yeah, that's the other thing. You don't want to pinch your saw.
When you say pinch, what does that mean?
Well, if you're, like, if you cut right here in the center, this is going to collapse on it, pinch your blade, and it's pretty scary. It kicks your saw back at you.
Okay.
So what you want to do is hang it off the edge. Hang it so that when you cut, that falls away.
Okay.
When you set your saw down, your guard drops and protects your blade. Now, if you have a saw where the guard is sticking, don't use it because you'll forget. You'll set it on the ground and it'll run up your leg or something. You know what I mean? You've got to have a good guard. And you know, it's still nice. I always still put a scrap on the ground to keep it off the dirt, because you set it down and it blows dirt sometimes. If you're just getting started and you want to cut a nice straight line, that's really important. You can run it on your blade. If you're trying to get a job in construction, you won't, this is really poor. Like, this is considered rookie only. But if we are
But if
rookies,
we are rookies, right?
then use it.
Well, I'm a rookie, so I'm gonna use it.
Right, so it's really nice. Run it right down that blade and you get a nice cut. But it is good, it is better to be able to follow a chalk line or a pencil line. But in the beginning, if you have something you really have to have a good straight line, you can cheat with
Maybe
this.
we could each do one of each.
Yeah.
One with it and one.
And I would like everyone to try both saws because, like I said, probably if you're using an old saw that your husband left you, it's probably the other size. So you might want to at least know how to use the other one.
Sure.
So,
Is that a framing square?
no, I'll get your framing square. That's a speed square.
Speed square.
Hey, Reese, so is there any, with this whole like right side, left side saw, does that help people that are right or left-handed or not necessarily?
Not
No benefit
Not really. It's
that
kind of
way?
what you're used to and what's easiest to see, Yeah, not really, no.
Okay.
No. It's, for on a job, if you're up high and you're cutting fly rafters or something, there might be an advantage. But for most use, there's no difference at all. You can't get to the end, so you have to go around and start from another spot. You back your saw up. You don't ever start your saw when it's connecting with wood.
Okay.
So you back it up. It doesn't have to be much. 1/4 inch is enough. Any of these tools, they should be started before you hit your material. I think every tool that I can think of.
Does anybody have questions about how to change the blade?
Yeah, I have no idea how.
Like that's something that most people don't know how to do safely. Make sure that it's tight, and maybe that's something everyone would like to see.
Yeah.
As far as changing the blade, new saws I think all have a brake on them. Older saws don't always. So you look around, and in this case, I think it's here, and that's the brake. And it usually, you push it in, and it usually gets to a certain spot and it stops. Although this one isn't, but it will, I think. There it is. Okay, see it? You push that in and kind of find a spot where it stops. And then there's a wrench. Generally, there's a wrench that goes with it, but you know, if you've lost it, a crescent wrench works fine. You just unscrew this. This and this washer come off. You pull this up, pull the blade out, and put the other one back on, and just put them back on. Make sure your teeth are headed towards what you're cutting. I mean, basically, just put it back on the same way, you know. And then tighten it up. And it doesn't have to be like, you know, brutally tight. I mean, you just tighten it back up. So, find your brake, lift this up, put if the wrenches that come with it are like a flat thing with a little bevel there, you know. But like I said, you can get usually any crescent wrench will work on it.
Lisa, is a brake and a safety the same thing?
No, a brake just holds your blade.
Okay.
And keeps it from spinning while you run time.
And should people, as like a safety thing though, make sure they have one with a brake if they're buying it now? Or is that not that big of a deal?
I think if you bought a new saw, I think they all have brakes, but I could be wrong on that, but it seems like they all do.
But maybe if you're getting one at a tag sale, look for one with a brake, or
If it doesn't have one, it's probably just really old saw, which, you know, sometimes really old saws doesn't mean much, like, you know, whoever owned it never used it much. It's kind of more how worn, how many hours somebody's used it. And it might be, if you're going to buy something, you might want to buy an old one at a garage sale and use it and see what you want to do before you go out and buy a new one, you know. And if you're going to go buy a new saw, I wouldn't buy this size. I love
get
mine.
your little one.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you've all used both sizes, but
Yeah.
this, if you run this all day long, I mean, it's pretty heavy. By the end of the day, you're pretty tired, you know, where that little one is considerably less weight. All skill saws have, this is the table, this flat part, and it's always in the back. They all have something in the back that lowers and raises your table. And if you can keep it deep so that, you know, this will cut the most. Like this saw will cut dressed frame and lumber. This saw will cut rough cut, full 2-inch stuff. And you can leave it like this, but if you're cutting something that's only 3/4 of an inch, you're probably better off raising that blade to what you just need to cut. Because that way, as you're running down a pencil line, if you start to go off just a little bit, if your blade's up higher, it's easier to get back on the line. If your blade's all the way down, it's going to be hard to get back on track. So you generally keep it just a little deeper than whatever you're cutting. And then this changes the angle that we want to cut at. If you want to cut a 30-degree angle, which if say you're putting on siding and they're vertical pieces of siding and you run out, you don't have enough to do all one piece. What you might do is put 2 pieces together and have them at a 30-degree angle, and the top one overlaps the bottom, so you shed water. But then you'd have to you know, change the angle on your saw. And so that, and most saws, you know, they have that written on the side, whatever degree you want. The other thing is, you want to check, are we plugged in? No. You want to check with, I don't know where my speed square is.
What, Lisa?
Yes, thank you. You want to check that when you go back, if you've had it at an angle, when you go back, you want to make sure that you're back on 90. You want to, you know what I mean? It should be cutting. It should be cutting this way. So you can plunge cut in if you want to cut, say you have a piece of plywood and you need to cut a hole, say for your toilet. You want to change your toilet, the floor's rotten. You can plunge cut into something. I'll show you this piece. And you hold it up above your material. And then if you're doing a long line, you snap a chalk line, and everybody know what that is. Well, a chalk line gives you a nice straight line rather than a board. You know, you think you got a straight line, but actually it's like
Lisa, can you show us?
Or your
a piece of chalk. Yeah.
Just do a snap line.
Sure. See, that way you have a nice, and you know, you can, say you've got a piece of plywood and you need 20 inches on this end and 25 there. And then you just run your saw down that line. Saws have, like this one I think cuts on the left, some of them cut right in the middle. You know, you just have to use your saw a couple times, figure out where you're cutting. And then if you want, put a little magic marker in the center to remind yourself that's where it cuts. And now some blades are a little thicker than others. You know, if you're really doing some finish work, precise work, you have to take into account that blade. I mean, some of them are actually quite thick. If you need a circle and you do not have a jigsaw with you, you just keep cutting around, you know, like you would cut glass. You know what I mean? You just take
straight first and then.
Yeah, and just keep, you know, making cuts all the way around. Sometimes you don't have to have a nice smooth surface, you just need. You may just need something that's not going to show, that has to butt up to something, so. And a lot of times you wouldn't have a jigsaw if you, depends on what you're doing.
Did everyone try the jigsaw?
I did.
Okay, so we saw if people wanted.
That's a fun tool. It's not scary, and you can do, like if you're doing projects, it's really handy.
If you're starting your shop, what would be the basic tools you would start with? Power tools.
Now, a shop for what?
Like, for me, then I would just want to do stuff. I don't want to depend on my husband. I want to build some little stuff, or just, you know,
Yeah.
self-sufficient.
A table saw is pretty handy.
Okay.
A circular saw and a screw gun are probably the first three basics. And a chop saw is pretty nice if you're, you know, I guess that would be my next,
Table, chop.
probably my next,
Okay.
yeah.
Table, chop, and circular.
Yeah. The other thing I said, you know, that all these are so outdated because they're all electric. But you can buy these packages of tools that are all battery, and you know, and you have quite a few tools. It's pretty expensive. Most of them are. They're right up there. $700-800 sometimes for them. So, you know, and I'll tell you, if you go to garage sales, there's always skill saws, always. And usually a new blade is all it needs, you know what I mean?
What about buying tools at tag sales? What should we look for? Is there
Or
anything that
avoid.
that, I mean, I guess the corded stuff is probably going there a lot, but that's still good, you're saying?
Yeah, oh yeah, a lot, yeah. I mean, that's what I used to. You know, the brand, it's hard to say. I mean, if it's there, ask the person, listen, is this here because your husband passed away and you don't want it? Or
You upgraded and you don't want it?
or you upgrade, you know, ask them what's wrong with it, you know. Most people are pretty good. Think about those old hand planes, how much work it is to I love the little curls you get, right? Those are fun. But it's pretty exhausting too.
So how often do you use this?
A lot. Oh no. You know, not really that much.
Because in building, you probably don't need it that.
Well, for the doors, when we hang the doors, usually I order pre-hung, but there's still, you still have to adjust a little bit. So we use it on the doors. Sometimes if we have to rip a lot, like we need some odd, you know, we need 5 1/4. And of course you can't get that. And so sometimes we'll run it through table saw and we'll have rough edges, and so we'll plane off the edge for trim. Really easy to get a ring caught or lean over and get a necklace caught, you know. And the other thing is loose clothing.
Loose clothing.
Yeah.
Ever wear loose clothing doing
Long hair.
or long hair, which she's already taken care of. But loose clothing, that's a big deal.
Yep.
Yeah, loose clothing and jewelry.
Well, please, if you do some projects, please, you know, send us photographs and let us know.
Yeah.
If anything, just if you feel a little more comfortable about knowing what the tools are and knowing that, you know, you can use them safely. You know, if you have a little more confidence.
Yeah, totally.
Thank you, Lisa.
You've been a great crew. I mean,
It's really been.
you guys have tried stuff.
Yes,
That's really cool.
yes.
And really, the big thing is, don't give up on something.
Yeah.
Like if you start a project and you're like, oh, it's frustrating, and you know, and just stop and think, oh, maybe I have the wrong driver, or oh, maybe, you know, maybe the extension cord I'm using actually, well, or doesn't, or you've tripped a breaker, or you know what I mean. There's just stop and calm down and think, oh, I can do this. Let me think this through. You know. Not giving up is a big thing, and the first time you do something, it might take forever, and the next time it'll be half as long, and the next time it'll be half as long. I mean, really, you just can't give up.
Unless you're tired and walk away that day.
And but then come back the next day. I mean, don't give up completely. You know.
And plan it too. You know, if as you start to do things that are more complicated,
Right.
as Lisa's suggestion, you know, get 2 foot, you know, measure, you know, plan what your material, so you're not wasting material, and you know, draw it, build it out of cardboard. So if you have complicated angles and you want to see how it works, I mean,
Well, and you can go online and get little plans for
pamphlets,
everything. And you think, well, I need a plan for a bench, that's silly. Well, wait till you start it. You might think you maybe do need a plan, but you can get all those. I mean, everything's available.
And if you're just starting out, if you have a place, building a sawhorse is probably like something nice and easy to start with. That, and you can be creative with it too. As long as it works in principle. There's lots of plans. I'm sure there's a million plans on the internet for the sawhorses.
There are, yeah. There's plans out there for everything, and sometimes it's fun to just wing it and try it. But if that isn't working out, there's plans. And if you get to a point you're like, Jesus, I don't know why it's not working. Most men are really helpful. If you ask them, most guys don't mind a bit. They like the fact that you're trying. I've never had any trouble on a job if I can't get something to work. I've never had trouble. And not just because I'm the boss. I think they're good with everybody, So ask somebody, but usually you can stop and figure it out. Figure out what's wrong, what's missing. And, the safety thing, Donna, great, no loose clothes, no jewelry, don't be tired, don't be distracted. And you guys, the fact that you tried stuff means you'll do well.
Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. This was really fabulous. Yes, thank you.
Well, thank you everybody for coming.
Beautiful.